I think over the last two sections, we talked about how automation can perform tasks in its own right very well. But ultimately, one of the biggest areas is actually how it can make agents better at their jobs. And that's by it truly can augment performance. And the beauty of this, I'm going to dive into how this works and how you think about it, but the beauty of the augmentation approach is that this would apply even if you're in super complex environments where the idea of a chatbot may not make sense for your organization, or if there's a lot of back-end work where it's so complex that you're not yet ready to trust it to automation. There's still a place for automation to play a role, and that's on the augmentation side. That's basically where it's making agents better, because right now, if you look at the environment, agents have to deal with a lot of clutter. I mentioned earlier how they have to look at multiple screens typically when they're supporting customers. They also have to deal with so many different sources of effort, from frantically trying to understand knowledge bases, trying to interpret CRM data, trying to authenticate customers properly, whatever it may be. And this effort directly hurts their ability to deliver a great experience. More importantly, since they're so flustered and so struggling and fumbling in the back end to make everything work, they're not actually being communicative with customers. They're not really delivering an interactive, personalized conversation. And so even if technically they get the right information on the back end, they're not presenting it in a way that makes the customer happy. They're not building a relationship. They're essentially just repeating information. And guess what? We can have bots do that for a lot less money and a lot more consistently. So if agents aren't actually able to connect, they're not really fulfilling their role. And that's where automation for augmentation comes into play. What you want to first do is start identifying these sources of effort. What right now is making life miserable for your agents? And what can you then do to address that pain? There's a million examples. I put some on the screen right now that you can see. This would be things like, allowing for an easier knowledge base or a more up-to-date knowledge base. This might involve intelligent routing, where instead of having a generic kind of concierge figuring out who the customer should be talking to, you route them directly to the right agent so the agent can get right down to business. This would be more relevant screen pops. So instead of having the human agent have to dig through the CRM, dig through the knowledge base to figure out what's relevant, the automation and AI-driven tool would just put the right information in their hand as the customer calls based on some authentication or identity triggers, and allow them to focus on, again, using the information to connect with customers, because that's what the agents should be doing. They should be connecting, not investigating. And when they're able to connect and they're able to truly use data to make the most of a moment, that's when you have a great customer experience. But I just want to say before I close and move on to the case study, automation is not just about streamlining effort for agents. It's also about empowerment. And one of the biggest areas that we see a lot of organizations doing, a big telecom company recently told me that they've been using this in millions of interactions throughout the year, and that's the idea of next best action recommendation. So by looking at the analytics and the sentiment of the call, looking at product issues or past behavioral data, the platform will actually tell the agent what they should say next or what they should do next, and the likelihood that it will have the proper effect on customers. And within your industry and within your contact center, you can obviously tailor this tool to focus more on sales or more on marketing. But the idea is coaching agents using automation to make the right decision in the right moment. That's a great experience for you. And now I know that we have another case study really diving into the augmentation approach.
Great, thanks, Brian. Pankaj, your case study to review.
Thank you. And this is the last example for the day from the airline industry, where passengers call for things like change of flights or amendments that they need to do, which we all do all the time. So just imagine a customer calling in for a ticket that they booked from, say, Hong Kong to London to New York, and they want to make an amendment to one of their legs. What actually happens at the back end is that the advisors need to log into complex GDS systems, which are nowhere like our Windows systems. They are age-old green terminal systems where they have to enter various commands to get that information. So what the advisor needs to do is log into the GDS, search for the PNR, log in and check the fare rules, and advise the customer what would happen if they want to change a particular leg in the overall journey. And they take about 5 or 7 minutes to be able to do that. And just imagine the customer comes back and say, by the way, can you tell me the same thing for another day? And the advisor needs to do the entire thing again. So what we did here is a good example of using automation to be able to aid our advisors whilst they're on the call. In this case, again, whilst the advisor manages the call, the robot does everything else from working on the GDS to pull out the customer details and the fare history of the PNR. It simplifies all of the information by bringing all the required information into a very simple to understand screen and provides the various permutations and combinations that may be required for the advisor to manage that call. With this implementation, what we were able to do is reduce about 30% of the overall processing time, leading to not only a reduction in cost, but more importantly, the NPS, which was earlier at 8%, improved to 25%. Another indirect benefit of this was improvement in retail loss, which is that whenever an advisor used to provide this information about penalties or any other fares, if they were making a mistake in doing that, with automation, we were able to contain that to a great extent. Again, a great example of how we are able to use automation with helping our advisors whilst they're managing a life call.